Hello everyone. My name is Maria Ines Villasmil. I'm doing this video as a request of my friend Christina. She asked me to share with you my personal artistic relation between writing and choreography. I hope this video works. I'm doing this video on my own, and I hopefully make myself clear and contribute to her research. She sent me a few questions, and I'm gonna try to go through all those questions, and I hope this really works. So the first question is, who I am. As I say, Maria Ines Villasmil. I have been in contact with Christina through Arte Total and through Gelra. I did already 2 artistic residencies in Braga, and that's how we met actually. And I'm originally from Venezuela, and I came to Holland already. I think I'm going to be here 19 years, soon 20. So I'm based basically in Amsterdam and traveling back and forward between America, Canada, South America, and doing all kind of research around Europe. So basically I teach in the Amsterdam School of Arts, where is my main place of work, and besides that I do a lot of independent work as a choreographer, as a teacher, researcher, and as a writer, since I'm part of the editors of a dance magazine based in Spain. So that's basically me. I'm a choreographer, of course, and I basically gonna talk about my last experience in Braga, where during my time doing artistic residence in the generation inside of the project called Gelra. I hope I pronounce it well. So basically I'm gonna refer the questions of Christina related to this specific project, and maybe I will make few reference to a project I did before in the Museo of Vizcaínos. So the first question she asked me is how I myself got involved with the city of Braga. As I say, I was here before working in another project in the Vizcaínos Museum, doing a short resident period with several dancers, and in the end we made a final presentation. This time I work basically inside of the museum, inside of the whole structure. We didn't went out, although we were dancing on the gardens and doing a scene of the whole piece over there. But this particular process I did last summer, I mean the summer of 2013, it was more around the relation between the city, the city as Braga, and how we do a connection with the spaces around the city, and how we get these memories and sensations we got from all those places back into the building of a generation where the final presentation of the piece was going to happen. So this was a site-specific project that starts in the city. So we went around the whole city of Braga, basically in an area that allowed us to move quickly, because we couldn't get so far from each other. We also were having a reduced time of work, and having the dancers going through all these places that they have to choose on their own, and make a small solo performance on those chosen areas. We move back to the building of generation, where the final presentation of the piece, or I call it the 9 choreographic installation, because in the end the whole system was made as an installation where each audience has the opportunity to have an individual performance. So it was a 1-1 relation, so it was a kind of private experience. So that was the way we got involved with the city this time. And I'm gonna explain later how was the whole process and method used to go to the city, work there, research there, find out information, document this information, and come back, bring it back to the actual building where the whole performance was done, considering the main difference between the two areas of working. I mean, the core of the center of Braga is very baroque, very old. And when we came back to generation, it is made around an old building, but it's very, it's much closer to a kind of modern architecture, and very clean and very simple, absolutely almost minimalistic space. What surprised me most? Well, what was fascinating for me, how much we connect the old facade of the city of Braga, and we were able to bring it back into a very modern architecture. So, as I said before, I asked to each of the dancers to go out of the city and found a spot where they feel attracted to for any reasons. Some of them explained that they were attracted to this place because they go every day in front of it and they were not really paying so much attention, or maybe they were paying attention but they never realized, oh, I want to do a performance here. So each of them found a place and I asked them to document the place. This means I asked them to make pictures. I asked them to make drawings if it was necessary. I want them to also realize where my audience was supposed to be watching my performance. So they have to also think about, if I perform in this corner, from where will be the best point of view for my audience to be seated. The other thing I asked them was to register any kind of physical experience, sound, whatever this specific place chosen by them kind of call to them. What kind of sensation, what kind of physicality, what kind of color, what kind of environment, what kind of noise, whatever. And for that, I asked them to just document this process, taking notes, making drawings, making pictures, but I did not ask them to physicalize any experience yet. So the first encounter with this space was just through documentation, writing, observing, making pictures, and just being there, sitting, observing. The idea to do that is to kind of ask them and force them, in a good way, of course, to see how they can open up their senses to all the information around this specific space, but not yet having the body immersed on that. So that was the first approach. Just document this experience and document all the possibilities this space, this specific corner of the city was offering. And for doing that, they just have to write, nothing else. The third question is, how do you expand the experience to a body that dances? Well, I think that writing contributes to reveal this creative process, because in the beginning I just asked them to do a kind of a brainstorm by their own. This was a very individual process. They were just there observing, watching, experiencing, taking pictures and writing. I asked them to write any kind of connotations coming out of this space. That was the first encounter. The second time I asked them to go back and revisit this space. Of course, they're having already a certain information, but also they have been documenting this process. So I asked them to go back to this place and then be more physical, involved with the place. Then at that time, at that specific moment, I think was the second day of our residence, I asked them to then go further in physical material, find physical material that somehow is coming from the experience of this specific corner or the door of a church or the corridor, a narrow corridor from the center of the city, or I don't know, there were so many places. Well, the first thing was registrate. The second part of the process was just going there and having these documents available, just to find a physical material into their bodies that somehow connect with all this information. So the third process of this artistic residence was to go back, and we make a parkour. We use a map of the city. Each of the dancers explain the reasons. Okay, this was the place I choose, and this was my reason to choosing that. And I just made together with them a parkour. So we asked them to go a little bit early. Somehow every time the audience was arriving, we found our performer already in the spot. So we were having a map of the city, and we were just revisiting the city, having this artistic view or these artistic choices made by each of our dancers. So this was the first time we were there attending a performance on the urban space. Christina asked me what books were very important in general for me as a dancer, but I want to mention that for this specific project, this site-specific project based on the body and the memory of the city, I was inspired by Richard Sennett, which is a sociologist, an American sociologist, and he has a beautiful book called in Spanish is called Juntos. I have it here. I think has to be with togetherness, or in Portuguese I think will be juntos, and it has to do with rituals and the politics of cooperation. Richard Sennett was kind of I was inspired in this text of Sennett because somehow the research I just did in Gelra this time in Generation tried to find the intersection of cooperation or coexisting of three main elements, which is the architecture, the public space, the choreography, and the body. We basically begin with these three elements, and we kind of develop a method that allows us to connect these three elements. And basically the interest of Richard Sennett was how we can incubate ideas to be explored in the urban space to later reshift into the performance environment. So basically this is what we did. I asked them to go out into the urban space, kind of catch and document this experience, and after I want them to shift this experience and translate this experience to a specific performance space. So basically my experience was to see how each of the performers inhabits the places they choose and develop a certain performativity, a certain material that belong to this specific place, and later bring it back to the several rooms we found into generation. That's why the final form of the performance was 9 choreographic installations, because it was a kind of an ongoing process of each member of the audience experience a very one by one performance. So the audience were going to get into a room, have a performance to themselves, and leave the room and get to another experience. But it was a very individual and a very intimate performance that actually started from the public space and was transformed into a very private and very one by one space. So of course the main connection between the two spaces were the carry on of the memories, and I think these memories were basically registered, documenting, writing, and also drawing the traces. And this method kind of allow us to recreate this experience into the space of generation. So of course there is another reason why I think this is very important in my personal work, the process of writing. I use a lot of the time, not this time, but in other experience, like in the Vizcaínos Museum. I asked my dancers, the collaborators, to write and do this automatic writing. It's just a way to also create a certain mental state, or kind of go through a process of writing without thinking. And somehow by doing this, certain ideas start to crystallize and emerge by itself. And during the last experience, the experience before this one in the Museo of Vizcaíno, I asked the dancers to also write. And basically we were again playing with the sense of memories. And I just asked them to write about all the memories they thought this beautiful house of the Vizcaínos Museo have. Trying to imagine how it was to live there. And they came with a series of writing words that later on were used in the final music score of the piece. So that's, for instance, how writing also was supporting an artistic process, a creative process, but in the very, very end was also used to the final design, the sound and sound score and music design for the piece. So the final question Christina asked is, how is writing serving the act of choreographing or making work, or me as a teacher, as a researcher, as a choreograph? I think the writing is always a tool that allows us to reflect, to document a process, to leave traces, to look at back and see how we start, where we were stuck, and how we move forward. So besides being a tool to enhance creativity, I also think that writing is a tool that allows us to document process and follow the traces. And I think allow us to be back and see from where we come from and how this final piece or final process was shaped in a specific way. So I think writing, having the possibilities of writing all the time, allow us to document a process, but also we have this contents possibility of reshape and also point back. This was the moment when we start to kind of find out where the piece was about. As a writer, I think the computer went off. As a writer, I think myself, since I have to also write in and as a part of the editors of the dance magazine, I have this beautiful image from a professor from my sociology when I was studying sociology. He always has this funny way of ask you a question, and maybe sometime after a few minutes when you start to answer the question, they were oral exams, they were not written. He immediately will stop you, or he will allow you to keep talking. So it was a little bit disappointing when you start just explaining your ideas, and after maybe 2 or 3 minutes he will ask you, okay, it's fine, you can leave, and in the end you get a very high grade. So we were always wondering. So I asked one day to my professor to say, but what's the reason I hardly say anything and you already stop me, and in the end I got a very high grade. And he said to me a beautiful word I think I carry on after more than 20 years. He said to me, well, Maria, you know, I need to have a very clear idea that you know what is the choreography of whatever you are saying. In order to know that you have a very clear choreography, I have to know right away that you have a very specific points that have to be addressed in the question I asking you. So in few minutes I can see that you have very clear the points of the choreography, so I don't need to see the development of the choreography, but I can see that you have the structure and you have the choreography of the answer and you have the choreography of the text if you are gonna write that. So this is why I just stopped you, because I know the rest is gonna come. But if I still listening to you and I don't see this clarity in the choreography, it's probably you will stay here talking maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes and I will be still trying to find the choreography, and in a certain moment I will stop you and maybe probably you gonna get a very low grade. I think until nowadays when I write, I still having this idea of the choreography of my text. When I document, when I write an article, or when I just basically have to reflect about a process, I always have this idea of the choreography of the text. What needs to be said first, and what are all the ideas to kind of support this writing. So for me, there is a natural relation between writing and choreography, and this is something that supports my process until today. So this is almost 23 minutes, and I hope I make myself clear. I hope that this was useful, and if there is any question, just call me back. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye.